I guess I'm going to go back to something that Chairman Johnson was speaking of a little bit ago, and he just glanced on it just a bit. After the last summer's very difficult summer with as far as parolees committing some pretty heinous offenses in the Commonwealth, could you elaborate for the benefit of the committee and the citizens of the Commonwealth some of the internal things that have been done to help perfect the system, make it better, so that, heaven help us, that never happens again in the Commonwealth?
Yes. In doing a deep dive for the parole board, as I mentioned before, what we did was we cut back on the number of cases or the number of hearings that board members and hearing officers, hearing examiners were having, so that we could do a little better job of exploring the inmate's background. What we also did was I met with the District Attorneys Association and asked and took some questions from them. They wanted more information from the DOC and from the parole board as to the background and what the inmate was doing. So they will be getting that information. Talked to the judges. They were pretty satisfied with what we were sending them. What I think we really did a better job of doing is looking at staff on the inside of DOC and really making them feel that their vote counted. We looked at the correction officers. Now, that particular one of the more heinous crimes, where the 8-year-old boy was stabbed, the correction officer did vote to parole at that time. But what we've asked now is that the staff not just give us a yes or no, but the reason for a no, if that be it the case, or the reason for a yes. Another thing we did was we're looking with the Secretary and the Sentencing Commission on looking at assessments that will address violence, the violence of a potential parolee. So those are some of the things that we looked at.
Chairman, if I could add one thing, I think one of the more significant things, I want to thank you and certainly Tom for adding the parolee murder review component to JRI. This is something that we had in the original merger legislation 100 years ago or whenever that was introduced. I think this may end up being one of the more significant steps in criminal justice. And what that is that's a group composed of district attorneys, probation and parole practitioners, certainly folks from corrections who and law professors who are going to frankly do the heavy lifting with the writing of the report. But every year we're tasked with reviewing every parolee who's committed murder, looking at everything with the case. So you can think of it similar to what the National Transportation Safety Board does when there's a plane crash. Recreate what happened, look at every decision. And that group is tasked with providing you all with a report annually. And I'm not sure, I know the meeting is going to take place sometime between late April and mid-May. And I don't know what the criteria is as far as the timeline is to get you the report. I can guarantee you that it's going to be at the end of that timeline when you get a report. But I would just really want to tee that up because Pennsylvania has never done this before. And I think if you look at the numbers, 44 parolees committed murder or were arrested for murder last year. Some of those took place the year before, which is about 0.1% of everybody we supervise. But I think there's lessons to be learned in that. And I just want to thank you and say that report really should shape some of our criminal justice policy moving forward.
Thank you very much. I think that is important to note, and it's important to learn from our mistakes, and I appreciate your proactivity in doing that. And one last question. The merger that's been done through the memorandum of understanding with the Board of Probation and Parole and the Department of Corrections, what has not been accomplished thus far through that administrative action, and that which not has yet been accomplished, what savings can be realized if there is legislative action undertaken?
Yeah, in our testimony, I think we're projecting another couple $1 million in savings. I think we achieved about 10 million, somewhere in that ballpark. But specifically, because of the structure, we have some labor issues as far as who does what, and I would point specifically to transportation. So we, in one case, we have a halfway house on the grounds of a prison, but can't transfer an inmate, a person who's in the halfway house, so someone who's on parole, a correctional officer can't walk across the street and take them because of the labor agreements. We have to call an on-call parole officer to do that. So we're projecting an additional $3 million. I have a whole write-up for you on that. So I think primarily the labor issues. I think secondarily to that, which I can't put a price on, is a lot of the justice reinvestment forced us to restructure our entire system, because as you know, it created a group of inmates who are now going to be kind of fast-tracked, some put in treatment in the community, some into what used to be the SIP. That whole structure is predicated on the assumption that we are one unit. So we have one 24-hour unit. Used to be parole and community corrections had separate. We combined those two. We're working towards combining other things. Everything in the new structure of justice reinvestment assumes that we're one agency. And so doing it by, executive order is not, I feel like need it codified. And we'll have a whole document for you here in a couple weeks.